Depth is the name of the game in this one, but some key standouts that could produce big time results on offense as well. It's all coming your way in the training camp preview, which rolls on, presented by my friends at Platinum AC and Heating. Dwayne's the best in the business, from repairs to replacements to just simple preventative maintenance. Call Platinum AC and Heating for any of your air conditioner needs. Don't sit in a hot room. It'll be hot. I'll be wishing for Platinum AC and Heating when I'm out at training camp this week, but the training camp preview continues right now. Where will the wheel take us? Let's find out as it spins and spins and lets us know where the training camp preview goes. How about Cam Robinson, the big free agent left tackle addition for the Houston Texans this offseason? Man, Robinson got a pretty penny to sign in Houston. Over $12 million if he plays every game and plays pretty well. There's some escalators and things like that, but at least 12 million bucks if Robinson's on the roster all year long. And he was okay last year for Minnesota and Jacksonville. It always felt to me like in Jacksonville, Robinson was getting replaced or trying to get replaced by the Jaguars for a few seasons. They never could quite get it right. And ultimately, they moved on from him and traded him to Minnesota after the Vikings had an injury to their left tackle, and Robinson was fine. I mean, he was solidly fine last year. Some of his pass rush allowed numbers weren't great. He allowed some pressures and some sacks. They were closer to some career highs for him, but the Pro Football Focus rating was fine, and he actually went up in his Pro Football Focus run block rating. And from what I've talked to people who covered him in Jacksonville, it's a guy that had a little bit of issue with how the Jaguars treated him, but then he finally figured out how to just be a professional and put in a lot of work and increased his ability to run block as well. He's going to get first crack at being the starting left tackle for this Houston Texans team. And if he solidifies the position, great. Just be an average left tackle. If the Texans were just solidly average across the board, that'd be awesome for the Houston Texans because they were really bad at some spots last year. They weren't bad at left tackle. Laramie Tunsil on an island individually did what he does really well. It just he didn't do it with the cohesion of the other four guys on the offensive line. Part of the reason, in addition to his expensive contract, why he's not on the Houston Texans anymore. And if Cam Robinson gets beat out by Ariante Ursary, then so be it. He's a really expensive backup, and we can cuss and discuss exactly how they should have spent some of the money instead of getting Cam Robinson. But of course, when you sign Robinson, you don't know you're getting Ariante Ursary just yet. So that is an element to think of. Here's what you would hope from Robinson. He comes in, he clearly is the best left tackle on the team. He locks down that spot, and for a year, he has left tackle taken care of, and the Texans can move on to a young tackle duo of Ursary and Fisher in 2026. That's the hope. And for Robinson, if he plays really well with the Texans, then boom, he goes and gets a big contract with somebody else, and maybe the Texans get a comp pick in 2027 out of him signing somewhere else in 2026. Worst case scenario for Robinson, he's a very expensive backup because somebody like Ariante Ursary beat him out for that left tackle spot. And that'd be fine. You can do a lot worse than Cam Robinson being your backup left tackle. It just would make me wonder, did you spend the money correctly in the off seasons? Who joins Cam Robinson in this training camp preview discussion? Jalen Noel, one of my favorite players that I'm excited to watch here in training camp. He's right up there with Jaden Higgins for me as players that I'm excited to watch in training camp. I don't know exactly what Noel's role is going to be initially, but I know what it can be. It can be a factor in the wide receiver room right away, and it can be a factor on special teams right away. Let's talk about the special teams quickly. He was successful as a punt returner at Iowa State. There's no guaranteed punt returner on this Texans team, and as a depth wide receiver initially, it's not like you're putting their number 2 or number 3 wide receiver out there to be the punt returner as the depth guy in the wide receiver room, helping you on punt return, maybe being dynamic, stealing a couple of yards, helping out that offense. I like that. As far as his ability to impact the wide receiver room, I love the chance that Jalen Noel is a player of note for the Texans in 2025. He's got pure, unadulterated speed that a lot of these wide receivers don't possess. He can take the top off of the defense. He can win inside. He can win outside. I feel like initially you attach him at the hip to Christian Kirk. You say, hey, you compare favorably to this guy. Go and learn about how he does things. And then from there, the more you can show us that you handle Jalen Noel, the more we give you. That's what the Houston Texans can say to Jalen Noel in this opportunity. And I just liked the idea of investing in the wide receiver position through the draft. They obviously got Jaden Higgins. He's going to be a factor right away. But Noel, him landing in their laps, and a lot of players that went ahead of him wouldn't have even thought about drafting those guys ahead of Jalen Noel. Heck, I'd have been fine with Jalen Noel at 34. That's how much I liked him as a draft prospect. So he's a guy to get very excited about. And in those couple of tiny moments in the offseason workouts, mini camp and OTAs, man, he had some really impressive stuff where he was getting open quick. He was getting loose on the defense. And there was a moment or two where the quarterbacks didn't see him and he was just running free behind the D. That'd be nice if he was doing that to opposing teams. It'd be great for him to do it to the Houston Texans defense in training camp. That would show that he's ready to go from early on. I thought maybe as a rookie, there'd be a bigger learning curve for someone like him than Jaden Higgins. But if he gets through that learning curve quickly, he's a factor for the Houston Texans right away in that new Nick Caley offense. Who joins Robinson and Noel in this conversation? Jake Andrews, the potential starting center for the Houston Texans here. Now, Andrews has played very little in the National Football League in his couple of years in the league. He's with the New England Patriots. He played a tiny bit at guard for the Patriots his rookie year, and he didn't play at all thanks to an injury. In fact, the last time he consistently played was in his final year at college when he played center, not guard, where he played in the NFL initially. Now, he played center at Troy, and the offensive line coach at Troy was, you guessed it, current Texans offensive line coach Cole Popovich. So there's some familiarity there with Popovich and Andrews. Andrews also a bigger guy. He looks a little bit thicker than Jaret Patterson and Juice Scruggs when he's out there. Can he be a mauler? Can he be a bit more physical than those guys? And then you think back to Scruggs and Patterson last year. Patterson a little bit better on the pass blocking, not as good on the run blocking. It's flipped for Scruggs. If Andrews could be average at both of those, if he could have a solid level of run blocking and pass blocking, then there's a very clear path to him being on this roster, not only as a center, but as potentially the starting center for this Houston Texans team. There's potential there that he could be the center. He could be a steadying force in the middle. Now, he hadn't played a lot of football, but Cole Popovich trusting him off of their college time together to come in here and compete and maybe win the job, that's the biggest thing. You have to hope that if Andrews is the starting center, he won the job. He was clearly better than Patterson and Scruggs and Eli Cox, the undrafted free agent rookie from Kentucky. He was clearly better than those guys, and he won the job. And if he doesn't win the job, he's a backup option at center. He's a backup option at some guard spots as well. And honestly, if he doesn't win the job, want to have the conversation about him just not being on the team because he hasn't played a lot of football. And, you're betting on potential if you see it and he starts, but you're also betting on potential if he's a depth guy, but he hadn't played a lot, but he's a young guy. He's a little bit cheaper. There's a lot to discuss there. Ultimately, you just want Andrews to just level it and be the starting center for this team, right? That's what I think the Texans are hoping for. Spin, spin. Let's see who joins these fellas in the conversation. Another offensive line addition from this year, Ed Ingram added to the equation in a trade from the Minnesota Vikings. Ingram is a second-round pick a few years ago. The Texans, I feel like in the draft process, I think they spoke to Ingram, if I remember correctly, but feels like a guy that Nick Caserio had a little bit of knowledge about. Previously, he trades for him after it doesn't work out in Minnesota. Now, it doesn't work out to the point in Minnesota where Ingram was starting and they benched him and he never got his job back. The Texans have him in to compete at guard, specifically right guard. He'll be battling Titus Howard amongst others for that right guard spot. And the way that I kind of phrased the Ed Ingram addition is you got purple Kenyon Green into the equation. Yeah, remember how bad Kenyon Green was last year? That's kind of how bad Ed Ingram was for the Vikings last year in Minnesota. So if he's that guy, then he's not a factor. He's not on the roster. He's not there. But new situation, different offense, new offensive line coach, fresh slate. D'Amico Ryans talks about it all the time. Fresh slate. Maybe Ingram comes in he can put together some of that potential that made him initially a second round pick for NFL teams. He can put some of that together and solidify at least a backup spot or maybe the starting spot for this Texans team. Not going to be easy for Ed Ingram to win a starting spot, but it's certainly possible that Ed Ingram wins a starting spot here for the Houston Texans. Again, not easy, but possible. Let's see what this wheel does to join those offensive linemen to the equation. We almost got another offensive lineman. Instead, we get one of the tent poles, one of the benchmarks of this team, Joe Mixon. Man, Mixon is the rushing offense. Until proven otherwise, Joe Mixon is the guy that they need on the field to run the football and run the football well. Really good last year in his first year with the Houston Texans, over 1,000 yards, went over for the third straight year, over 1,200 total yards and 9 touchdowns as a running back. He's done that for 4 straight seasons now. He is a modern example of consistency at the running back position. There's only been 2 running backs over the past few seasons that have had more touches than Joe Mixon. That's Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs. Mixon, not the most snap in, snap out productive guy. His 4.1 yards per carry is a little bit lower, but he gets the job done, and he was a force dragging along that offense at different times last year. Now, this year, hopefully it's a little bit different for Joe Mixon. Hopefully the offensive line is better. They're more consistent. There were games where Mixon would start hot and he'd be gone because the offensive line got figured out and the offense got figured out for a good portion of the game. And then he'd kind of have a moment here or there late. Consistency throughout some games would be nice. That's not something that Joe Mixon's totally in control. His health is something that's important this year as he gets up and up and up and up and up in total touches at the running back position. He's got to be a healthy player for the Texans to rely on him. And Mixon is one of the best players on this team. In fact, I think he's the 5th best player on this team, behind only the defensive ends, Nico Collins and Derek Stingley. So he's an important element. He doesn't have a true, considerably confident backup situation behind him. He is the rushing offense until further notice. They need Joe Mixon, and if they've got the typical Joe Mixon season, they're going to be just fine. You don't have to have a lot more than 1,200 total yards and 9-10 touchdowns from your running back. I'd be content with that from Joe Mixon. Let's see who joins Mixon in the conversation. The training camp preview. The spins on Kurt Heinisch, defensive tackle that the Texans decided to bring back this year. Heinisch, interesting player because he was healthy at the end of last year, and he found himself as a healthy scratch in favor of Tommy Togiai. And you look at the defensive tackle room and you look at the veterans like Mario Edwards and Foley Fatukasi and Sheldon Rankins. You look at Tim Settle as a veteran but not quite a young guy. And then you look at the young guys like Tommy Togiai, Junior Tafuna, Keontae Hamilton, and it might be tough for Kurt Heinisch to make this team. He is a player that they thought highly enough to have. He was hurt in training camp last year. They had him on the IR to return to start the year. So they thought highly of him, but by the end of the year, he was not a factor, not in consideration. I would put him pretty low on the depth chart. And I'd even say that if the young guys are even with him, you go ahead and go with the young guy, and Heinisch gets passed up by the younger player. But Kurt Heinisch, a factor in the defensive tackle conversation, not going to be easy to win himself a job. Here we go, spin it around. Johnny Johnson III, a wide receiver that's been around here for a couple of years now and been a factor in the preseason and the training camp for a couple of years now. Johnson, solid enough training camp player, been around the organization, doesn't have any advantage of knowing the offense or understanding things because, well, it's brand new offense, brand new offensive coordinator. So he starts from scratch. He's never really gotten close to consistently cracking the 53-man roster or being a practice squad player that you would promote. I don't know that that's going to change here, but hey, a couple of years of experience, maybe he fits better in this offense versus some other offenses that the Texans have run, but he's a depth piece and a depth body for the Houston Texans here in this wide receiver room and in the quest to figure out exactly how they get this offense going. If you need to get your air conditioner going, my friend Dwayne at Platinum AC and Heating can get it going for you. Maybe it's just a simple repair. Dwayne will do everything he can to repair it. If you got to do a full replacement like I did earlier this summer, Dwayne can take care of you. He's got the best prices and the best service in town. His guys got a full air conditioner replacement for me done just like that. They were finished in a heartbeat. It was so quick. The whole process was so easy. Maybe it's just simple preventative maintenance to make sure your AC is running as good as it can. It's the hot part of the year. Save a couple of bucks on energy because your AC is running more efficiently with that preventative maintenance. It's pretty easy to see how Platinum AC and Heating is the best in the business, and pretty easy to see how they can help you from repairs to replacements to simple preventative maintenance. Call Dwayne at Platinum AC and Heating if you need anything associated with your AC. The wheel spins. The wheel for AC guys would just have Platinum AC and Heating on it. We just talked about Jake Andrews. Let's talk about another center for this team, Eli Cox, a undrafted free agent center out of Kentucky. And Cox, pretty successful in the SEC for Kentucky. Wasn't some amazing player. Obviously, he goes undrafted. But again, when you look at Eli Cox, when I saw him in the offseason workouts and the minicamp OTAs, he's a big guy. And the Texans spent a pretty decent amount of money to bring him in as an undrafted free agent. So it tells you that they like him a little bit. He's got a lot of bodies he's got to climb over to not only make the roster, but also be a practice squad guy. But fresh slate. You come in, you outperform some guys that have been here for a couple of years. Remember, it's a new offense, but it's not a new offensive line coach. Cole Popovich has been here for the Houston Texans. So if you come in clean slate, Popovich has maybe a preconceived notion about guys that have been in the building, you could maybe fly past them, even as an undrafted free agent, rookie, and a center, a little bit of guard actually for Cox as well. There's a chance he plays guard for this Texans team as well. So again, long journey to make the roster, probably practicing and working out and in the preseason trying to be a practice squad guy that maybe finds himself with a better chance to make the team a year from now. But when you think back to the Patriots and you think back to when Cole Popovich and offense coordinator Nick Caley were both coaching on the Patriots staff, they had an undrafted free agent center make the squad and protect Tom Brady. That was David Andrews. It's not out of the question that they would trust Eli Cox if he goes out there and earns it, but he's got to go out there and earn it. Spin, spin, wheel. Tell us who is next. Dameon Pierce. Well, this is an intriguing one because a couple of years ago, it would have been madness to think that Dameon Pierce would not be on the Houston Texans roster. But now he is in a tenuous position. When the general manager mentions first that you're a special teams useful player and you're a running back, that's not good for your chances to make the roster. The addition of Woody Marks and Nick Chubb make it very difficult to find himself in the conversation as a backup to Joe Mixon. So how does Dameon Pierce find his way onto this roster? He's got to be excellent on special teams. And he had some really good special teams moments in the past couple of seasons, specifically last year on the new kickoff rule. So if he has that again in the preseason and in training camp, that's a positive for him. And he's got to be a good running back when given opportunities to work out as a running back. He wasn't a good running back the past couple of seasons. He couldn't figure it out with that Bobby Slowick offense. Well, maybe fresh slate, new offense. This is more in tune with what exactly Dameon Pierce can execute at a high level. And if that is indeed the case, then perhaps Pierce has a route to the roster. It's not going to be easy, though. He's going to have to for sure beat out Nick Chubb. He's going to have to for sure be better than Woody Marks, and he's going to have to for sure be better than Daria Gumbawale, and he probably needs some other special teams guys to fill in with what Ogumbawale does so that his special team stuff is useful. Again, tough path, but not impossible to make the roster like, say, maybe Johnny Johnson. It feels a little impossible for him to make the roster. But it's going to be hard for Dameon Pierce. And maybe it's just time for a fresh set of situations and a fresh set of downs and a fresh set of opportunities for him in another spot somewhere else across the National Football League, because it hasn't clicked all the way for Dameon Pierce since that rookie season, and that was many, many moons ago. The wheel spins again as the training camp preview rolls on. An offensive lineman heavy situation here. Let me tell you about Zach Thomas, or as I like to call him, Yukon Cornelius. That's what he looks like. He looks like the claymation guy in the Rudolph thing. Now, I think he's trimmed his beard so he doesn't look as much like Yukon Cornelius. When he got here last year as a waiver claim by the Texans, he did look like Yukon Cornelius. He plays a tackle, and I know he played a little bit of guard previously, but he's going to be in the tackle conversation here for the Houston Texans, specifically at the right tackle spot. And he's going to be breathing down the necks of Blake Fisher and Ariante Ursary, trying to win himself a spot at offensive tackle, trying to go in there and be a factor in not only potentially being a starter, and if he doesn't win the starting spot, being a backup tackle for this team. Think about it. There's a lot of tackle options for the team. We know Ariante Ursary is on the roster. We strongly suspect that Cam Robinson and Blake Fisher are going to be on the roster. So that kind of really only leaves a 153-man spot for a tackle. Well, Trent Brown, if he's healthy, he's a factor. Zach Thomas will battle with Trent Brown trying to be that guy. Austin Deculus is a factor. Titus Howard could also help back up at tackle. So if he's a backup tackle, does that maybe have only 3 for sure tackles? Because Titus Howard can do it. You got to go out there and win your spot if you're Zach Thomas. Now, having been in the building, not an advantage because new offense, but knowing Cole Popovich, understanding perhaps how he wants things to operate, maybe Thomas has an ability to find his way onto the roster and maybe be a backup. I wouldn't put it totally past him being the starting tackle. I would probably put it at less than 10%, but I'd put it higher than, say, Austin Deculus being the starting tackle, or Titus Howard being the starting tackle, or Trent Brown being the starting tackle. So not a great chance for him to start, but a path to the roster is very clear and very evident for Zach Thomas. And when you factor in who he's going to go against in practice, if you could have a couple of impressive moments against Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson, or even Derek Barnett, Darrell Taylor, you maybe have something there, and he'll have to be really good in the preseason games as well. So Zach Thomas, again, as we go offensive lineman heavy, the wheel decides. I don't decide. The wheel decides. But O-line heavy, and Thomas, another depth piece there potentially on that offensive line. Spin, wheel, and tell us who is next. Miles Bryant. So a depth piece in the secondary for the Houston Texans. And Bryant was on the team last year in training camp and had an opportunity to make the team. Didn't make the team. Practice squad guy. Wasn't on the practice squad. Then was back on the practice squad. And there was a whole lot going on with Miles Bryant. Ultimately, after Petrie and Ward were injured last year, Bryant got a very tiny crack at that slot cornerback position. Now, the Texans didn't play him a ton there, and he's probably too small to be a factor for the outside, but maybe a little bit of special teams help, maybe some safety help in a pinch, some outside cornerback help in a pinch, some inside cornerback help as well. The versatility for Miles Bryant is something that's going to need to be a big positive for him. He's going to have to contribute on special teams as well, both in the coverage units, return game if he can. So there's a lot that Miles Bryant has to do, and then has to do it well to make this team. There's just so many different options that the Texans can go with instead of Miles Bryant that are either more proven or younger or have more useful versatility. Like, for instance, Jalen Smith can play inside and outside. He's a bigger player than Miles Bryant. You'd feel comfortable with Smith outside, not comfortable with Bryant outside. You see how this becomes an uphill battle for Miles Bryant, but hang around the organization, prove some things, and maybe a practice squad spot. Or, hey, I don't think it's out of the question with versatility that he could be the very last guy to make the roster. Get one more spin in here. The wheel lets us know who is next. Fitting one here. Bottom of the video, bottom of the depth chart here. Keaton Slovis. Slovis will be in a dogfight with Graham Mertz to be the practice squad quarterback for this team. I don't believe either quarterback is going to make the roster. But Keaton Slovis and Graham Mertz are both going to be fighting each other to see if they can be the practice squad quarterback. Now, again, like I've talked about with other offensive players, the same offense would have been a huge advantage for Keaton Slovis. And having been in the NFL for a few years, he does have an advantage over Graham Mertz, who is a rookie. But physically, Mertz is a more impressive player if his knee is healthy. He's got a bigger arm, and that's a guy that if he's the practice squad guy this year, maybe he could be the backup next year for CJ Stroud. I don't see Keaton Slovis ever really fulfilling that role at the NFL level. It feels to me like Keaton Slovis be around the NFL for a few years, then ultimately maybe ends up in coaching in some way, shape, or form if he wants to do that. He's not physically impressive. He hasn't looked great in the opportunities in training camp, mini camp, OTAs in the past. So there's not like some sort of discernible skill that you can point to and be like, he does this really well. Like with Mertz, I know there's an arm there bigger than Keaton Slovis is, and maybe there's some long-term potential to teaching Mertz how to be the backup. I don't see it with Keaton Slovis. I don't see him making the 53. Could he beat Mertz out and be the practice squad quarterback? Most certainly he can, especially because he's had that NFL experience. He knows what's expected of an NFL quarterback. They're familiar with him in the quarterback room. So I can definitely see that, but that'll be up to Nick Caley and quarterback coach Gerard Johnson to figure out who those quarterbacks that ultimately are on the organizational chart at the end of training camp. I don't expect it to be Keaton Slovis, but I've been surprised before. Are you surprised by my analysis of any of these players? Let me know in the comment section down below on your way down there. Thumbs up on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Check out the other training camp preview videos. All 90 will get featured at some point here in the training camp videos. Don't forget to check out my friends at Platinum AC and Heating. I appreciate you watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I can't wait till we talk Texans again soon.